Hello, I'm Donald Leggett, and welcome to the latest London Southeast CEO interview. I'm joined by Gordon Stein, and he is the Chief Financial Officer at Cleantech Lithium, and they are the AIM-listed Chilean lithium explorer developer who currently have 3 direct lithium extraction projects in the Chilean Andes right now. A scoping study is being published for Laguna Verde, with one to follow shortly for Fransansisco Basin, and Llamara, potentially the biggest project of them all, is still at an early stage of development. Gordon joins me now to discuss the financials and routes to funding for the project and to answer all those many detailed questions which have recently been asked by investors. Greetings, Gordon. How are things with you?
Good to see you, Donald. It's been a while, but good to see you again.
It's been a while, but I've been working with Cleantech over this last year or so. So you're gone but not forgotten, Gordon.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How long have you been at Cleantech Lithium, Gordon? And why did you enjoy? What encouraged you to join?
I've been 15 months now being at Cleantech. I was approached, actually, interesting, by a Nomad, the company's Nomad. They were moving forward on what was going to be the planned listing in London, and they needed a CFO. They were restructuring the board, and I was asked to join, or at least asked to look at the company. So I was sent a presentation. I've done 20 odd years as CFO of a number of companies, including 5 London listed companies, AIM and main market. And I got approached about this, and I've done natural resources. I've done diamonds, gold, minerals, and so on. Never done lithium. So I looked at the project, looked at the opportunity, and I was really, really intrigued by what I read, particularly the green element. So I sent it to someone you know very well. You've interviewed before, someone I trust implicitly, and asked him what he thought. And response was, "Can I invest?" He actually said he'd been involved in other lithium companies, and he thought that Cleantech was by far and away the most opportunistic. So that individual, I mean, he gave me the confidence to stay here. This is what I thought it was, and that individual's now invested, I think, over £400,000 in the company. So it was really a series of circumstances. I was available after a company I'd worked with previously had merged, and the timing was right for me. And this was just a fantastic opportunity, and I think I'm delighted to have joined. It's really, really interesting.
Fantastic. Good answer. I'm going to be a bit cheeky now. I'm going to ask you to mark your own scorecard. How do you think the company has performed since then? And what do you see as the key achievements in your 50-month time frame?
Oh gosh, marks out of 10.
Yeah, marks out of 10 for yourself, Gordon.
I genuinely, tricky. I was going to say for the company 8 or 9. Me, well, somewhere below that. But I mean, what have we achieved? I mean, it's been quite astonishing. I mean, we're moving in a very nice direction at a very steady, nothing fast pace. I mean, in the last 18 months, effectively 15 months, we've listed on London at a time when the Russians were invading Ukraine and the market was crumbling in front of our eyes. We raised 4 million at the end of December 2021, which when we went out to raise 400,000, we raised 4 million at 20 pence a share. 3 months later, we raised another 6 million, just short of 6 million, at 30 pence a share. So, which is a good return for investors who came in earlier. And we listed in London. We actually received the award for the best, the AIM Award of the year, or AIM Award of the year, best IPO of the year, which is fantastic. So, getting that IPO away gave us the foundation to move forward. And then since then, it's been a program of activity. We've invested that money in the ground in technical studies and activities to move through the various phases of the project. So really good progress made, and obviously resulting in this latest scoping study which came out, and other activities going on our other projects. So I think we've got a really good story that's building here, and I think we've got some really interesting stuff for investors over the coming months.
It's worth noting that AIM-listed companies averaged a 30% loss in 2022, Gordon. So for you guys to have raised your capital, you're above the IPO price, and you're set fair, that's quite an achievement.
Well, we actually, I forgot to mention, we raised another £12 million in November, and again, in difficult market conditions. So, basically, we've raised the better part of £20 million, moving the share price from 20p to, well, it's around about 44p now. We hope to see that growing significantly over the coming months for various reasons that you'll explain a bit later on.
Okay. The results of the Laguna Verde scoping study were released last week. Could you summarize the Laguna Verde project for us and the key highlights as you see them?
Yeah, Laguna Verde is the first of three projects we've got. It's 4,300 meters up the mountains in the Andes in Chile, and it's effectively around a laguna up the mountain. There's local communities that are 2 hours away down the mountain, about 100 kilometers away. There's no distinctive and unique flora and fauna. It's a beautiful area, but there's it's a big footprint, 67 square kilometers of footprint, and the bulk of the 99% of the asset and what we'll be targeting is in the subsurface aquifer. About 100 meters, 50 to 100 meters down is a big 300 meter subsurface aquifer, which is where we access the brine. That brine contains lithium, reasonable quality lithium, 200 plus milliliters per liter or whatever. I can't remember, but anyway, 206, and good quality for what we need. So we plan to use that resource that we've identified and move the project forward. And that was part of the scoping study, identify the economics of the project, where we would put our footprint, how we would actually take the project forward. So really good piece of work, 225 pages, really detailed study over 6 months to get to this stage. So it's part of the stepping stones we have to go through to move the project forward towards the development stage and ultimately onto production.
The scoping study indicated capex costs of around, well, let's round it up to 400 million. The study said 383 million US for Laguna Verde. It's a large amount for a company with a current market cap of 50 million US. And as long-term holder Philip Flowers puts it, that could represent significant dilution for existing shareholders, even if a fraction of that capex is funded from further capital raises. How can you reassure existing long-term investors like Philip that all is not lost?
Well, I do think that I mean, I'm a shareholder of the company. I took my first 5 months of pay in shares because I believed in the company. I've invested in the company in both pre-IPO and IPO. You know, in my terms, certainly not insignificant sums of money. All of our board are investors. You know, Aldo, our CEO, is a major investor. So we're very cognizant of optimizing the position of our shareholders going forward. We believe that there's the catalysts and announceable events we're going to have over the next 6 to 9 months are going to see a re-rating of our shares. We genuinely believe that because we've got a lot of activities that's going to increase the resource base, the information in the market. There's the PFS that's going on, the environment impact studies, the permitting process we're going on with the government. There'll be announcements from the Chilean government. I can come on to that later on, which are like to be made in the near future. So we think there's a lot of catalyst events which will see our share price move, up. Remember, when I joined, we were 20p. We're now at 44, 45. We're moving upwards quite steadily, and we can see that growing significantly. I mean, our broker, one of our brokers has got us at over £1.20 a share. That's just on a very, very prudent basis. And Cannacord have got us on £2.80 a share, just on Laguna Verde, £5.50 if you add on Fransansisco Basin. So we believe there's a lot of running room. So that'll set the scene for let's call it the shareholder base of the company. But we've got a product that's in demand. I mean, the worldwide demand for lithium and supply demand curve is out of kilter. There's not enough supply for the demand that's likely to take place. 10 times increase in Europe in the demand for lithium. New lithium projects are on the way around the world, but we're one of the players who've got, what is a reasonably significant resource, 2 million tons today. We hope to double that within the next 6 months from the drilling campaigns we've got at the moment. Probably worth mentioning, we've got 3 rigs on the go today in Chile. That's quite unusual. 3 rigs on 3 wells that we're moving forward on to expand the footprint, expand the resource base, and to provide a better foundation for conversations we'd like to have with strategic partners. I think the market has changed significantly as well in the last year to 2 years. You've got the Teslas now talking about buying mines or downstream activities to access a product that they need. Otherwise, they don't get lithium. They've got no cars that they can sell. And that's the same across the whole of the EV market strain, whether you're a battery manufacturer, whether you're a car company. There's international traders who play in the stock. So we're in a nice spot there where, you've seen in a lot of our peers, some of the major entities, car companies and battery manufacturers now investing, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in companies. And why are they doing that? It's to access offtake. They need supply. and guaranteed supply. So we're entering that space. We've had contact from quite a number of companies in that space, household names, very early conversations. We want to get to a point where, one, we've got the value point in the company in a better place, and where we've got the resource base higher. We believe we can be talking to people about a resource base of 3 to 4 million tons plus. And you're building this story up over time. So the funding strategy over the course of this year is we're going to have basically conversations with strategics, probably in the second half of this year.
I could stop you there, Gordon. You've deliberately not taken offtake agreements because you think you can be in a stronger position a few months, 6 to 9 months down the road, and will be in a stronger position to negotiate a better deal.
Yeah, our board's discussed this at length. I mean, about the right timing of this. Certain companies go out there and get non-binding agreements, and then those non-binding agreements disappear 6 months later. It's non-binding. We want to go into there in these negotiations with a position of strength with a genuine intent of having a binding agreement. So, on the back of the resource upgrades and the PFS, we have a hard-nosed conversation with people who want our product. And what people do to access that product, they'll provide funding. That's the way it works. They'll maybe take an equity stake in your projects. That's quite a normal route, where you get a major entity, whether it's in the Far East or in America, or whether different companies take a minority stake in the project and provide capital to support your project. They also open the doors to the banks. These are companies where I've got huge relationships with very deep-pocketed banks, and then you have a conversation around that. So we're building the story up so that when we have those conversations, one, we're in a position of strength, and two, we genuinely negotiate around deals, and these are binding deals where and so there's a process we're going through to get there, and we're pretty confident that we can secure deals through the strategic partners and then the banks. There are other forms of funding. I don't know if you want me to go through those now.
Let's stop there. Let's break it down into all the different elements, because you have so many options. It's like a complex financial jigsaw puzzle, and it's how you put these pieces of the puzzle together and in what order. So let's dive down into the order. What mix of debt and equity might you be looking for, and where, as you were just about to mention, what are the most likely sources for those sorts of funding?
Well, if we start with debt, debt's the obvious place to go. I mean, debt you tend to see debt around about 60% or whatever. But in the conversation with my chairman yesterday, I mean, this is a chairman who put forward a $1.75 billion funding package.
Stephen Kessler, who's a very impressive individual, by the way. I was most impressed by him. He does not take prisoners.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, and
you can see it.
He was CEO of the biggest copper mine in the world, and had to put together a very large funding package, and did it, with Mitsubishi Sumitomo. They brought the Japanese banks into play. There was other parties, all part of a consortium, all wanting product. So they brought the banks into play, and then on the debt funding, we're looking at between 60 and 70%. I think based on the basics of the economics that we're seeing from the Laguna Verde scoping study. These are really strong economics. Within 1 year, 8 months payback, banks will love that. And this is a lithium price of $22,500 per ton. The price is 3 times that today. Now it's not going to be 3 times that today in 2 years' time. There'll be market movements, but it'll be $22,000 a ton. And you look at the economics, and based on the production rates and so on, this throws off money. So banks will like this. We can build a nice debt strategy together, and I think the whole thing is going to work. So banks is the obvious one. We've got conversations with entities this afternoon, early conversations to see where we go. Those are people who have approached us in the last week since the scoping study came out, with very deep pockets. So early days, and then there's a couple of other new interesting things that come into play. We are an ESG company. We're going to look to get certification. We've got a project going on that. We've had an independent study done by a company who advises companies on ESG strategies. That report was received in October, and we're now moving forward to the next stage on that. So, and that's about how do you get certification. If you get certification, you can access ESG funds. There's trillions of dollars sitting in pots of money in the States and elsewhere, looking for homes on clean product that can feed the chain, that don't have a big carbon footprint, and tick all the boxes in terms of all the right things to do in terms of the green portfolio. So We'll look to access ESG funds. We're going to have conversations with companies in the next few months on that. And as I say, we're going through also a certification process. And another interesting development in the last couple of months was the Inflation Reduction Act, which is, it sounds like it's to do with inflation. It covered a lot of things in the States. This was signed by Biden. It's Biden's big green push to improve the footprint of the US, particularly in the EV market, and electric car vehicles and the products that go into them. A drive to have cleaner products going into them, and 80% of those products being in pure clean terms. And there's large sums of money the US government is making available to companies who can help them with that. So Lilac, a company in the States, which is supporting DLE technology, was given a grant of $150 million to go and promote and to improve their processes. We'll be talking to the US authorities. We've already had a contact. They've contacted US Embassy in Santiago, contacted us before Christmas. We'll be following up those conversations directly with them and potentially talking to people directly in the US about seeing how we can access those funds. So, and then yes, there is an equity mix to it. It'll be a question of the timing of that, and minimizing dilution for shareholders, finding the right mix, but also giving shareholders.
Who provides that equity? Is it possible to get all that equity from a strategic investor, or indeed strategic investors?
A mix. Strategic investors can plump a lot of money into projects. I mean, in terms of, and I'd say they invest in sometimes in the subsidiary companies, not necessarily in the top company. But there's routes as well through various financial institutions and other entities to look at how we fund this. Very conscious of, I'm a shareholder, absolutely optimizing the position for our shareholders and making sure that we move the share price and do it at the right time, so that we're having those conversations in a position of strength. And there's funds in the States, there's funds in Australia. We'll be looking at all of those as we move through the year and start, strengthening our position for those conversations.
Can I ask you? I mean, for some companies, I suspect the markets are closed, but for quality projects like yours, with an 18-month return on capital, it does sound as though they're very much open. But that wouldn't mean that they're open for everyone, just for high-quality projects such as yours.
That's right, and that's why we have to go through certain stages. We've got our EIA, Environment Impact Assessment, on the go. We started that last April. Why? Because some companies do it. They don't necessarily parallel run things. We're parallel running a lot of things, all geared towards.
You're parallel processing, that great phrase.
Well, EIA started in April. That's about getting baseline. This is a requirement of Chilean law. You have to demonstrate where you start, and you have to make sure that you work in the right way, and you work out your impact on the environment. So the baseline studies are moving forward, looking at the 4 seasons and flora, fauna, all the natural things that we're working in. That's going on. We've got a hydrogeology studies going on to work out what happens when we take the brine out of the reservoir and we re-inject in the reservoir. Where should we re-inject? What are the impacts? When is the follow-through going to come through? So that's a pretty extensive study. That's a seven-figure dollar study that's going on. A pretty deep in study. We've hired people and some great staff in to manage it and to work with that. So that's going on, and again, that'll be.
You say it's costed you $1 million,
and more. Yeah, this is a study covering both Fransansisco Basin and Laguna Verde, looking at what goes on underground. You need to do this as part of the whole EIA.
Serious piece of work, Gordon.
Sorry?
A serious piece of work, Gordon.
No, it is, and the EIA is more than that. I mean, there's 3 or 4 pieces of work which are costing the company reasonable sums of money. Which is, we raised the money to do this, because this is what you need to do. You've got to get your environment impact assessment approved, and that's a 2-year process, and we're well into that. The hydrological studies, those results are required for the PFS, pre-feasibility study. That pre-feasibility study is the next stage of the scoping study, which we just completed. And you're moving the project through the next stage, which takes account of the EIA, the hydrological studies. We've got a pilot plant that we'll be commissioning in the 2nd quarter of this year. That's on order, coming from Belgium. It's a subsidiary of Sunresin. Sunresin, they're probably doing the most advanced DLE provider in the world. They've got 3 operating plants in China. They're building a plant in Argentina. They're looking to build one in the States with Anson Resources.
Is Sunresin actually extracting lithium and creating it currently?
Yes, Well, they're not extracting; they're working for clients, and there's 3 projects that are up and running in China. They've been working. I mean, what they've done in China, they've turned projects that were nothing with very, very low grade brine, which you couldn't possibly use for full evaporation ponds, which is the old way of getting lithium. They get the brine to a certain point. I mean, 50 parts per million. We're at 206 or 300 if you look at Fransansisco Basin. You can then, using DLE, which is effectively a technical process, not using special chemicals or whatever, it's effectively using a resin to attach the lithium to it, and various ways with technology. You're extracting the lithium in a very clean way, and then through a process of chemical, a normal chemical process, which you would do beyond evaporation ponds anyway, you end up with battery grade lithium. So we'll end up with either carbonate, or we're looking at whether to take that to the next stage as hydroxide. But from that process, we can produce battery grade lithium. We've done it already in a lab. We've produced 1 kilogram. It was tested in a independently certified in Germany, 99.9%. That's more than enough to satisfy any battery or car manufacturer in terms of the power. So we're in a good place. We're stepping through that process. Going back to the catalyst events, you around about the 3rd quarter of this year, the pre-feasibility study will be complete, because it takes part of all of those components. The pilot plant we're commissioning will provide us with 1 ton per month.
The PFS, the pre-feasibility study, is pretty key in terms of pulling together funding, I would imagine. Is that the flip point?
Yeah,
at that point, the project is pretty much de-risked.
Not pretty much. You're well on the way to being de-risked, because you've done you're well through your environmental impact assessment. You'll have the results of your hydrological studies. You'll have you'll see the results coming through your pilot plant. The pilot plant produce 1 ton per month of battery grade lithium from that process, and we will be sending the lithium and the battery grade to potential buyers around the world, off takers. We'll be sending it to the Far East, to America, to Europe, to various people who would want to test it in their process, see if it works. If it works, we'll have some very interesting conversations. But the PFS brings all of this together and takes the scoping study to the next level. This is the point which the engineering's done. You know where you're going to place your plant, and not the engineers done. All the engineering design, at least in that process. So you've then got a document. We say, right, okay, we've got a project we're ready to move forward with here, and let's put the funding in place. That's what triggers the funding. So all of this is moving forward, parallel running, and it's at a reasonable pace here. I think, Steve said in the interview yesterday, normally in the mining industry, whether you're in Chile or elsewhere, 5 to 7 years from your initial exploration and discovery to getting on stream, and 5 to 7 years is relatively quick. Because we're parallel running, because we're doing the pilot plant and so on, we hope to be there, by 2025, 26. People I've seen, on social media, I think that's slow. That's actually reasonably fast, because you have to go through certain gates. People won't just give you money unless you've gone through gates and proven you can deliver, and the quality and all of those things.
Steve and Aldo made 2 very valid points. Let me bring them back to you. As Steve said, it's vital that things are done to quality and don't unravel in front of your eyes afterwards. You've got to do it right. Do it once, do it right. And Aldo made the point that Chile's actually not some dodgy backward place. It's actually one of the preeminent mining jurisdictions in the world, along with Australia, Canada, and the US. Which, I mean, given that he's Chilean, he's in the insider. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, that was a surprise to me. I mean, I've learned a lot more about Chile now. I've been out there. I've met with government and had very interesting meetings with lots of parties. The Chilean mining industry was basically built around Australia and the Canadian mining rules. So they're very stringent processes. They follow the right route. And I think Aldo mentioned yesterday, Bechtel's worldwide headquarters outside the States is in Chile. There's mining engineers. There's 30 years of business experience in the copper mining and the gold and so on. And it's a big industry. It's a major provider of revenues for the government in Chile. And the regulatory process is pretty much the same as Australia, Canada. All those jurisdictions have got a real good mining footprint, and so we're very comfortable with the way things are going, and the access to really good skilled local resources, management, etc. We've got a fantastic management team and a support base with technical skills in country and obviously you're paying certain rates in country, which is fantastic, rather than bringing international expertise into country.
And you mentioned that Steve and yourself have got experience of actually raising funds in such a circumstance. So, do you want to just briefly explain that to us?
Yeah, I did a maths. I've raised over $2 billion in funds over the course of my career, largely in the oil and gas business. But I raised money in Sierra Leone for an iron ore and a diamond company. So it's about how you package the whole thing together. Steve was CEO of Kayawasi. He was CEO of Escondida, first and second biggest copper mines in the world. This is billions of dollars of funds, and it's about pulling the strings together in a cohesive way, provided you've got the good base data and you've got the models and all that thing to support it. So
And you don't do it alone, you do it as part of a team. So which institutions and brokers are going to be assisting in chasing the Laguna Verde CapEx requirements?
well, we've been blessed. We've got two fantastic brokers that work with us in slightly different spaces. You know, Daniel Fox Davis and Fox Davis Capital have helped the company move through the various phases, and we've got quite a number of activities we're working on with Daniel this year, and he'll be a key part of a whole program of work going forward. Had a conversation with them on this yesterday, and then Cannacord. Cannacord actually approached us late summer when they realised we existed. They'd missed us, and they see a long-term opportunity working with us in terms of opening doors. They cover 30. In fact, I made a note here from something. They're the dominant fundraiser for small and mid-cap mining companies globally. I mean, the dominant funder. You know, they're head of Bank of America, Citi, Morgan Stanley. You know, they've raised 869 million just in 1 year prior to 2022. So. And then they've raised, they raised $200 million for Vulcan Energy. They've also got the potential of picking up the phone and opening the doors to the Teslas, to the BMWs, to the battery manufacturers. So we've had really interesting conversations with them about when to press the button. Again, it's about the timing, the phases. We've got some conversations with some other entities, who can open doors this afternoon, coming out of different conversations. So we're just steadily moving forward, doing our bit on the ground. As I say, we've got 2 drilling campaigns going on at the moment. Remember, we've just been talking about Laguna Verde. Fransansisco Basin's 6 months, a year behind Laguna Verde. It's a similar size, similar potential, and there'll be a lot of synergies between the two projects. So funding, we may end up with a mix of funding depending on how fast both of the projects go side by side. And with Laguna Verde throwing off cash within a relatively quick period of time.
Let me stop you there. Would you do those two in parallel process? Are you going to take those two together? Because the scoping study is not far away for Fransansisco Basin. But will that mean that you're looking for 400 million twice at the same time, or how are you going to deal with that?
I don't know the answer to that. I think our plans is Laguna Verde and then Fransansisco Basin. That might change depending on what comes out of the scoping study. We're drilling at the moment in Fransansisco Basin. On the second well, which we're completing. We did half that well before the winter came in. And then we'll have 2 other wells. So basically we'll have 4 wells, results of 4 wells in the early part of the second quarter next year. Really interesting, because we only had the results of the first well. They were really positive, 500,000 tons just from that first well. So we hope to get 2 million tons. And then it's a question of, from the scoping study, looking at of what is required to bring that project on stream. And at the moment, we've got Laguna Verde first. Who knows whether that stays or whether we try and do both at the same time. What's interesting is when you put the mix of the two funding together, the money that Laguna Verde is going to be producing quite early on from the project, depending on debt funding structures, that's going to produce a lot of money that we can put into the other projects. So there is going to be cross fertilization. We won't be raising 800 million for both of them. It'll be 500-600 million for potentially both of them, because there is that.
So you're actually self-funding the second project, whichever it happens to be.
Yeah. You look at the numbers, and that is absolutely possible. Now it's obviously a question of timing, and obviously there's going to be a capacity issue, but building 2 projects at the same time. So and then just to throw one other into the mix, with the third project, Llamara, is pure greenfield field. It's 344 square kilometers further north, in an area where we know there's brine from oil and gas geophysics that's been done. Question is there lithium in that brine? And if there's lithium in that brine of a quality, then that might change the mix again. This is huge. It could be potentially huge.
How
I
much
mean,
do you know about Llamara? I mean, do you expect to find lithium in that Llamara brine?
there's lithium on the surface, crust on the surface. So if there's lithium crust on the surface, you would assume there's lithium elsewhere. It's really, we're pretty confident there's lithium there. The question is it sufficiently, is it sufficient quality of lithium that would work for the daily processes that we plan? Remember,
Is it commercial? That's your question.
absolutely. And remember, in China, there's some projects that are running on 50 parts per million, 50, and that's a quarter of what's at Laguna Verde at the moment. I say at the moment, deliberately. And it was over 300 at Fransansisco Basin. So anything beyond 100 is in DLE space now, which is direct lithium extraction, I've explained before. So Llamara might come into the mix, and the timing of that is we're in the latter stages of securing the licenses for that. They'll be granted through a court process, hopefully this month, next month, and then we'll be hitting the ground with an exploration well. That's a $200,000-$300,000 well. It's relatively quick. We can move on that when we get the permits in place. So hopefully sometime this quarter, maybe early next quarter, it'll be yes, no, and it'll be really interesting. I mean, our board is fascinated to see what we're going to get here, because that then will throw everything into the mix about timings and what we've got here. So at the moment, it's Laguna Verde followed by Fransansisco Basin, and with the big question mark on Llamara. So interesting.
But watch this space. Much to be discovered. The next 6 to 9 months are going to be packed full of news flow. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, I think I would just, if I could just summarize that, I think it's really important investors understand there's a heck of a lot of news flow going to come over the next few months. We've got the scoping study now for Laguna Verde. There's 2 drilling campaigns we're drilling at the moment, which is on Laguna Verde. And remember, what we've done is we've cleaned up wells that we drilled last year, and we're resampling those wells. There was some dilution in the original wells that we had. We announced that, so we'll be announcing the results of that, hopefully in the relatively near future, of those cleaned up wells, and then we'll be announcing hopefully a resource upgrade. We've got 2 new wells to expand the footprint, so hopefully 1.5 will become 2 plus. And moving, half of that is at the moment inferred, hopefully moving a lot of that into measured and indicated. Suddenly you're, close to 2 million measured and indicate, which is very nice. That's a company in itself. And you've got Fransansisco Basin, the result of the other 3 wells on top of the first well. That's a resource upgrade. It'll be a resource upgrade. It's a question of what will it be. And then, so that'll be early part of the next quarter as well. Potentially some sample results coming up before that. We've got the ongoing EIA we'll be reporting on. We've got the scoping study from Fransansisco Basin will come out of that as well. That work is already ongoing. I mean, ad infinitum at the start of that work. We've then got, additional activities going on. We've got a pilot plant starting. We've got a PFS moving. And then Llamara, that's going to be an interesting one. So all throughout the course of this year, almost every quarter, there's going to be a steady news flow where hopefully we're building the confidence and de-risking all of those projects bit by bit in different ways.
Okay. Let's look at some of the negatives, the potential challenges for Cleantech Lithium as you look to secure funding. With your green credentials certainly help, but are other people trying to occupy that same space? Even the Chilean government plans to establish a national lithium company. Is that going to be a problem for you guys? What's your point of view on that?
Well, you read social media and you think that people read into certain things, and maybe not with the real understanding. There's been a national copper company in Chile for years, Codelco, and they produce, but it doesn't stop lots of other private companies producing copper in Chile. There's an ARMI, which is the national mining company, which has various different products and so on, and actually is now moving to lithium. They want to bring a national lithium company to play. My understanding is it's going to take 2 or 3 years. There'll be announcements on that in the relatively near future. We don't see that as a threat whatsoever. We actually see that as a great opportunity to work with government in some sort of private. They've mentioned public-private partnerships. This is the way forward. They realize, in fact, in September, they announced invest in Chile through the president and all his ministers went around the world saying, come and invest in Chile. That's private money, private company money that's coming into Chile. So there's a lot of lithium in country. They were #1 in the world in terms of production up until a couple of years ago. They've been passed by Australia. Argentina's catching up. they want to be number one again. So the way to do that is to spread the load. So we've had some really good conversations with government at the highest level, near the highest level, both at regional level and government level, and those conversations continue. So we don't see the national lithium companies as a threat. We see it as a way of working with, and actually we can bring technology to government and Chilean ministry. We've been asked to provide, to do seminars to the technical people in the Chilean government. We've been asked to go into universities. We've been asked to bring university students into the company on interim basis and intern basis, and also working. So we've
having Aldo being a local is presumably a bit of a win, is it?
Aldo can pick the phone up and talk to people at different levels of government in the right places, and has got a very good sense of touch about where to go. We had meetings yesterday. I know we had pretty sensitive meetings yesterday. And also remember Aldo built significantly involved in 3 major solar plants in Chile, 850 megawatts of power. That's pretty big. Involved in that, before he joined Cleantech Lithium, or started Cleantech Lithium. So he's got a good handle on how to work the system in Chile and where to go, and he's now built a team. I mean, it's probably worth mentioning we had 3 people in Chile a year ago now. We had 3 people. We've now got 20 people. We've got a management team and a support staff structure and various different consultants and so on. And, we've got a really powerful management team that we've actually brought in from, whether it's legal, technical, commercial, geophysics, and hydrogeology. We've got daily specialists. It's fantastic, sitting on the weekly meetings, seeing the way the team's blending together, and it's all focused on very clear deliverables in terms of timetable that we've told the market.
Okay. Now, before we go, let's take some questions from Leo Coot, an old colleague of ours, a long-term investor. Now, Leo says, I read in the chat rooms that some private investors are concerned about the time to first production. We have touched upon that already, but let's do it one more time. What is on the critical path? Permitting, construction, and so on. Have you considered an early temporary mobile yet commercial production plant? This could be first used on LV and later on FB. Thank you, Leo, for that question. What's your response?
Thank you, Leo. Timing. We're moving forward. I've mentioned parallel running. Critical path items, getting the environmental impact assessment approved. We would hope that would be the early part next year. We're well on the way through the processes and have really good support doing that. You've heard about the pilot plant. We really need to prove that we can produce battery grade lithium on a regular basis at the right quality, and that's the whole reason of the plant that we're building. That's another large sum of money that we're investing in that. The PFS, we really need to get that done, because that's the message that we can actually put out to the funders about how you fund your project. And then from then it's just you're going through your engineering and construction phases. So if we can get to 2025 and actually be producing in 25, that'll be a fantastic achievement in any walk of life worldwide. Ad infinitum were a bit more prudent. They were talking about a year and a half for that construction phase. It's just 300, 400 people, up a mountain building a plant. The plant, by the way, are pretty much hidden around. I mean, we already know where we're going to build the plant. And so, you've got a construction phase with a lot of activity going on. So 25, 26, that'll be a reasonable time scale. And that's a time scale that will allow us to bring the funds to bear and to actually deliver a project of quality. So
he mentions mobile production. Is that worth it, or is it better just to concentrate on the bigger prize?
It could be a distraction. We've obviously got the pilot plant, and scaling that up would take time. And we've got wells to drill and so on. Building a large construction phase. Just we're going to have 300 people with about 10 people from Sunresin supporting us. So it's fundamentally locals who we'll be working with. But I think mobile plant, I'm not really sure in the timings. You also have to have permits and approvals and so on. The other key one is the permit. I mean, the production permit. We submitted that in March, and we then had to unsubmit it because the new government was coming into play. We've now had long conversations with government. You can assume we're going to be resubmitting that in the near future, in a very similar manner to previously. And we're going through a process of approval with them. And I've mentioned before public-private partnerships and wanting to move the needle forward in Chile. So we're very confident we'll have those production permits in place, and certainly within the timescale that we need.
The
So
government reaction to you seems broadly positive, yes?
it was really interesting, the meetings we had, because the understanding of DLE wasn't what I thought it might be. It kind of bypassed quite a few in the government, and the fact that, one, there's no evaporation ponds, two, there's no, you're doubling the quality of the grade you're getting out because of the way the DLE process works. So a real interest in sustainability. I mean, that's the big word that the government uses consistently, is sustainability, from not just from lithium, but from all the production plays that are coming in now. Evaporation ponds, there won't be any new evaporation ponds in Chile. The world has moved on, and the government is very clear: sustainability, local jobs, and working with government. And I think that's the way forward, and we embrace that. It's just what we are.
Very good. Okay, so let's talk sun resin and the relationship with the Chinese. So US and Europe and Chinese relationships continue to deteriorate, says Leo. With Chinese supplier sun resin delivering the DLE technology, is Cleantech taking steps to reduce the risk of a single source technology provider? Over to you, Gordon.
Thank you, Leo. Again, it's well, the dynamics in the world with the Chinese is changing. I read yesterday that China's are buying more coal from Australia again, and that dynamic has changed literally in the last few weeks as China's moved in. So, but let's look. I think you need to look at it in the context of what Sunresin is. It's a public company in China, $4.5 billion market cap. It saw a niche in the market to use its skill set and expand into lithium about 5-6 years ago. It's the biggest resin provider in the world. Interestingly, 70% of apple juice goes through sun resin in the world, because they remove when you cut an apple and it goes brown, they remove the brown bit because people like to have a clear apple juice. So they found a niche in the market, and and having got projects up and running in a sustainable manner in China, they're now stepping out. So they're building a plant in Argentina. They're working with Anson Resources in Utah in the States. And I know of other places they went to in the States when they were there recently. They're a service provider. They sell a product. They don't take equity stakes in the company like other Chinese companies have done. We've got a fantastic relationship with them. De-risking, you should remember that the first kilo of battery-grade lithium was not through sun resin, it was through Beyond Lithium. Beyond Lithium registered in the States, but they're a Chile-based company. And they continue to provide consultancy services for us and technical advice. They were originally our original plan to build the construction phase and so on. So we have a backup option. It's not the preferred option, but they're continually working alongside sun resin ourselves. And we met with sun resin in Chile before Christmas. Really fantastic meeting, and we believe we've got a good working relationship. So we don't think there's a big risk because of the nature of the way their business works. But we could step into another way of doing it if we had to.
You do have a backup plan if sun resin weren't to work out.
Yeah, we would step into that.
Okay,
and it's actually worth mentioning, there are other public companies I know who Sunresin is also talking to, and it would open people's eyes if they knew who those companies they were talking to, who supposedly have their own proprietary technology. But I know where Sunresin were going after. They left us in Chile.
Okay. Third question from Leo. Aldo talked about using debt to fund the development. Is this modelled in the economics? I.e., does the 1.8 billion NPV take the interest payments into account? Now, there's a good detailed question for you.
Yeah, it was, and we asked ad infinitum to assume. I mean, they've assumed full equity. Now, that's not going to be the case, but effectively they've taken a full dump of equity and no repayment of debt. So the economics would be better if we actually played debt into play. So the 1.8 billion would go up because whilst there'd be interest charges, which is tax deductible, we would get the benefits of when you look at the IRR and returns and so on, you would get better benefits. So we're already taking action to optimize our position by looking at tax structures and the way we structure our businesses in Chile, and then obviously debt comes into play. But no, the biggest impact on the economics isn't debt or equity or whatever. It's the price, and we think the price is in a good place at the moment and is sustainable. And there's a lot of upside there in that price, given where the market is at the moment.
Okay, Gordon, we've had a good old chat. All things must come to an end at some point, though. finally, could you summarize for us what CTL shareholders can look forward to over the next 12 months? In other words, what does the news flow look like? Why is now a good time to start following the company if you're not yet a shareholder?
Well, I think we've come a long way in certainly 15 months I've been involved. You know, we've 2 drilling campaigns on areas that have never been drilled before. We've got resource base of 2 million tons, which we think will grow. We've got a lot of news flow coming. We've got some amazing studies going on, all part of a parallel path towards that growth stage and towards the construction phase. We've got a route to funding, and we've got people knocking on the door. We're going to have a really, really interesting year. And I think if you're a shareholder, you know, from where we were 15 months ago at 20p, we're at 44p plus now. I would hope to see us grow significantly from that. Our brokers are confident through their analysts that we can do that. And I think, you know, from a company's perspective, in my view, we can only grow. I'm really excited about where we're going. We've got a fantastic team here, a really good board, great supporters, and we're really, really pleased at the support we've had from shareholders. So to shareholders watching, hope to see you have fantastic success this year as we move through the stages, and we'll keep you up to date as much as we can.
Gordon, let's end it there. Thank you so much. That was Gordon Stein, CFO at Cleantech Lithium. That was an in-depth deep dive into the economics of Cleantech Lithium's different schemes which they are operating in the Andean mountains of Chile right now. For more free company information and data about Cleantech Lithium, please go to the CTL pages on London Southeast. And meanwhile, do follow us on Twitter at London Southeast, or register on London Southeast YouTube. So you just pop that into Google and you'll receive alerts to interviews and webinars just like this one. Thank you for watching. And as always, do stay safe.